To understand why the narcissist cannot recover from betraying a super-empath, we have to first understand what the super-empath actually represented in the narcissist's psychological economy. And it's far more complex than most people realize. The narcissist, as we know, operates on what's called narcissistic supply external validation that temporarily fills the void where authentic self-worth should be. But not all supply is created equal. There's a hierarchy, a spectrum of quality that the narcissist intuitively recognizes even if they can't articulate it. Most people the narcissist encounters offer what we might call surface supply, admiration for their appearance, their status, their performance. It's transactional, replaceable, ultimately hollow. The narcissist consumes it quickly and needs constant replenishment because it doesn't actually nourish anything real. It's empty calories for a starving psyche. Then there's the super-empath, and what they offer is something categorically different. The super-empath doesn't just reflect the narcissist's grandiose self-image back to them. They actually see the person underneath the construct. They perceive the wound, the terror, the fragmented self that the narcissist has spent their entire life defending against. And here's what makes this so intoxicating and so dangerous for the narcissist. The super-empath sees all of this and still chooses to stay, still offers compassion, still believes in their capacity for something more. This creates a type of supply the narcissist has likely never experienced before. Validation that feels real because it's coming from someone with genuine depth, authentic perception, and the emotional sophistication to hold paradox. The super-empath can simultaneously see the narcissist's defended false self and their defended true self, and they respond to both with a kind of radical acceptance. For the narcissist, this is like discovering water after a lifetime in the desert. It's not just that the super-empath makes them feel good about themselves. It's that the super-empath makes them feel real, seen, known. And for someone whose entire psychological structure is built on hiding from being truly known, this is both terrifying and irresistible. The super-empath also brings something else to the table. Intellectual and emotional depth that actually challenges the narcissist. Unlike the typical supply sources who are easier to manipulate and control, the super-empath engages with the narcissist at a level that stimulates them. There are real conversations, moments of genuine connection, exchanges that feel substantive rather than performative. The narcissist becomes addicted to this quality of interaction in a way that's different from their addiction to regular supply. It's not just about maintaining their grandiose self-image. It's about experiencing something approximating authentic relationship, even if they can fully participate in it reciprocally. But here's the trap. The narcissist cannot actually metabolize this kind of supply in a healthy way. They can't integrate it, can't build on it, can't let it transform them. Instead, they consume it. They take and take from the super-empath's depth, using it to feel momentarily whole, but they cannot give back in kind because they don't have access to their own emotional depths. They're drawing from a well they cannot replenish. And this is where the betrayal becomes inevitable. The narcissist's pathology eventually compels them to devalue and destroy the very thing they're most dependent on. Perhaps because the intimacy becomes too threatening, perhaps because the super-empath begins to require reciprocity, perhaps because the narcissist's shame at being truly known becomes unbearable. Whatever the trigger, the narcissist sabotages the relationship in ways that are often spectacular in their cruelty, and then they lose it. They lose this unprecedented quality of supply. And here's what they discover in the aftermath. That cannot be replaced. The narcissist might find other sources of validation, other people to manipulate, other relationships to dominate, but they will never again find someone with that particular combination of depth, perception, tolerance, and genuine care. They will never again experience being seen that completely and accepted anyway. They will never again have access to that quality of connection, that level of intellectual and emotional stimulation. They've destroyed something irreplaceable, and on some level they know it. Every subsequent relationship becomes a disappointing echo of what they had and threw away. Every new source of supply feels shallow by comparison. They're trying to satisfy a hunger that only one specific type of nourishment could address, and they've permanently cut themselves off from it. You cannot replace someone who saw you completely and loved you anyway, especially once you've proven them right to leave. But the loss of supply, devastating as it is, points to something even more psychologically catastrophic for the narcissist, because what the super empath actually represented was something the narcissist has organized their entire existence around: avoiding being truly known. Let me explain what I mean by this. The narcissist's whole psychological architecture is essentially an elaborate defense system built to protect against a core wound, a profound sense of defectiveness, shame, or worthlessness that formed early in their development. Everything about the narcissistic presentation, the grandiosity, the superiority, the need for control, the lack of empathy, these aren't personality traits. They're armor. They're a fortress constructed to ensure that no one ever gets close enough to see what the narcissist believes is their fundamentally unlovable true self. And this defense works reasonably well with most people. The narcissist can maintain the facade, can keep people at the precise distance where they provide validation, without penetration, admiration, without actual intimacy. Most people never see past the mask because the narcissist never lets them close enough, or because those people don't have the perceptual capacity to see through the construction. But the superpath is different. The super empath has this almost uncanny ability to perceive what's happening beneath the surface. They can sense the wound underneath the grandiosity. They can feel the terror underneath the rage. They can detect the fragility underneath the apparent strength. And critically, they can hold all of this in their awareness simultaneously without being manipulated by the false self or destroyed by the narcissist's defenses. This means that for perhaps the first time in the narcissist's life, they're in a relationship with someone who actually knows them, not the performed self, not the curated image, not the strategic presentation, but the actual fractured, terrified, shame-bound person underneath. And here's the paradox that the narcissist cannot resolve. Part of them desperately wants this. Part of them is starving for the experience of being truly seen and access had anyway. This is the fantasy that drives their pursuit of the super empath in the first place. But another part of them, the part organized around survival, finds this level of exposure absolutely intolerable. So throughout the relationship, the narcissist exists in this excruciating double bind. The super empath's perception of their true self is simultaneously the thing they crave most and the thing they fear most. It's both the most intimate connection they've ever experienced and the most threatening when the relationship ends. When the narcissist inevitably betrays this person and drives them away, something irreversible happens to the narcissist's defensive system, because now they have to live with the knowledge that someone saw through everything all the way down to the core and ultimately chose to leave anyway. This is fundamentally different from other relationship endings. When a typical supply source leaves, the narcissist can tell themselves a comfortable story. They couldn't handle me. They didn't understand me. They weren't on my level. They left the performance, but they never knew the real me. This allows the narcissist to maintain their defenses intact. But with the super empath, this narrative doesn't work. The narcissist cannot deny that they were known, cannot pretend the empath just didn't understand, cannot hide behind the excuse that the empath only saw the surface. The super empath saw everything: the wound, the defense, the pattern, the pathology, and the empath still left, not from ignorance, but from clarity, not from inability to handle complexity, but from self-respect. This completely destabilizes the narcissist's core defensive structure. If someone can see you that completely and still choose to walk away, what does that say about what T. Hay saw? If the one person who understood you most deeply ultimately concluded that you weren't worth staying for, how do you defend against the implication that maybe the shameful, defective self you've been hiding really is who you are? The narcissist cannot recover from this because it's not just a loss, it's a validation of their deepest fear. It's evidence that being truly known leads to abandonment. It confirms the very thing they've organized their entire life around avoiding. And worse, they can't unknow that they've been known. They can't rebuild the wall that's been permanently breached. Every future relationship becomes haunted by this experience. The narcissist now knows what it feels like to be truly seen, which means they know what they're hiding from everyone else. They know the difference between someone who's fooled by the mask and someone who sees through it. And they know that the one person who saw through it completely chose to leave. This creates a kind of psychological scar tissue that never fully heals. The narcissist might find new supply, might craft new relationships, might even convince themselves they've moved on. But there's always this awareness, often unconscious, that they were once fully known and fully rejected, that someone had complete access to who they actually are and decided that wasn't enough. And perhaps most painfully, the narcissist knows, even if they can never admit it, that the super empath's departure wasn't cruel or vindictive. It was simply the natural consequence of the narcissist's own actions. The empath didn't leave because they misunderstood or couldn't handle the narcissist. They left because they understood completely and chose themselves instead. The narcissist cannot rebuild what the super empath's knowledge dismantled, the illusion that remaining unknown keeps them safe. Let's talk about what happens in the practical day-to-day reality of the narcissist's life after the super empath leaves, because beyond the psychological devastation of being known and abandoned, there's something more immediate and visceral. The narcissist must now face the one thing they've spent their entire existence avoiding themselves. The super empath, you see, wasn't just providing validation or even deep connection. They were functioning as what we might call an emotional regulator for the narcissist's inner chaos. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by this, because it's not the same as codependency or enabling, though it can appear similar on the surface. The narcissist's internal world is fundamentally dysregulated. Without a coherent sense of self, without access to genuine self-worth, without the capacity, thank you for self-soothing or emotional integration, the narcissist exists in a state of chronic inner instability. They're constantly oscillating between grandiosity and collapse, between rage and emptiness, between the terror of being nothing and the exhausting performance of being everything. Most people in the narcissist's life can't handle this level of internal chaos. They're either completely fooled by the grandiose presentation or they're quickly overwhelmed and retreat. But the super empath has this extraordinary and ultimately self-destructive capacity to hold space for the narcissist's contradictions, to remain calm in the face of their rage, to provide grounding when they're spiraling, to offer a kind of stable presence that the narcissist's own psyche cannot generate. Over time, the narcissist becomes profoundly dependent on this regulatory function. The super empath becomes the container for feelings the narcissist cannot process, the anchor when their sense of self fragments, the mirror that reflects back a coherent identity, when their own threatens to dissolve. And because the super empath does this so consistently, so skillfully, the narcissist doesn't even recognize it's happening. They just know that somehow in this person's presence they feel more real, more stable, more whole than they do anywhere else. Then the empath leaves and suddenly, catastrophically, that regulatory function disappears. Now the narcissist is alone with the full force of their internal chaos. All the feelings they never learned to process, all the self-fragmentation they never learned to integrate, all the emptiness they never learned to fill from within. It's all still there, but now there's no one to help them manage it. There's no one to absorb their rage without retaliating. No one to witness their vulnerability without weaponizing it. No one to reflect back a coherent self when they're fracturing. This is different from missing someone. This is different from grief. This is the experience of losing a crucial part of your own psychological functioning. Like losing a limb you didn't know you were dependent on until it was gone. And here's what makes this so devastating for the narcissist. They cannot articulate what they've lost. They don't have the emotional vocabulary or the self-awareness to say, I depended on this person to regulate my nervous system, to contain my projections, to stabilize my sense of self. Instead, they just experience a void, an unbearable gnawing absence that nothing seems to fill. So they try to fill it. They find new supply, new relationships, new sources of validation. But here's the problem. No one else has the super empath's unique combination of depth, resilience, perceptiveness, and tolerance. No one else can perform that regulatory function at the same level. The new supply might be attractive, might be successful, might even be kind, but they lack the emotional sophistication to hold the narcissist's complexity. They're either too shallow to perceive what the narcissist actually needs, or they're too healthy to provide it. They set boundaries where the super-empath had limitless patience. They retreat where the super-pamp would have stayed. They demand reciprocity where the super-pamp gave unconditionally, and so the void remains. The narcissist keeps searching for what they lost, but they're searching for something that cannot be replicated. They're trying to find someone who will do the impossible work of making them feel whole the way the super empath did, but that person doesn't exist. Or if they do exist, they're another super empath who's already learned not to sacrifice themselves for someone who cannot reciprocate. The narcissist begins to realize on some level that they're alone with themselves in a way they've never been before.